Today I would like to share with you a couple of tips that will help you to have a successful internship and that eventually will make your employer to offer you a contract. And if you haven't watched the first part where I focus more on grooming and on dress code, click on the link somewhere over here and check the first part. I'm giving some practical, some really useful tips. I did an internship in a French-speaking part of Switzerland in one of the financial institutions. I was an intern for more than a year, so I really have some material to share with you today. Let's get started. I'm going to begin with the first point, and this is to identify clear objectives. Ask your manager about clear expectations of what is requested from you unless you have discussed it during your interview. But it's still good to take a moment with your manager and to actually ask what is expected from you. Whether it's work on a specific project, perhaps you're going to work with different teams. It will help you to have a clear idea of what is expected from you and what you have to do so that you will not get bored at work. The second point is to try to check in weekly with your manager. In my case, we had a weekly meetings with the team where we would discuss what everyone was working on. Unless you don't have the weekly meetings, you can meet at the same time every week. If it's a short internship, every week. If it's a longer, once in 2 weeks. It depends on the frequency, if it's required or not. Just for your manager to know what you're working on, what is your workload, whether or not you are not bored, because there's no point for you to stay in the office and just to update internet page of your company. There is no use of that. You're there to learn, you're there to get an experience and not just to doom scroll on the internet page. Of course, you should have a conversation with your manager whether or not it makes sense for you to have a weekly meetings, but I think it's something that can help you to really stay on top of things. As an intern, you're not expected to know everything and to have years of experience, but quite the contrary. You are expected to ask questions, to stay curious, to be open to new projects. Of course, don't get overloaded as well. Just see if you can get on new projects or not. Always check it with your manager and get his approval first before jumping on another project. In general, you are expected to be curious because you're a young adult. Let's say this internship is a part of your master's or a part of your bachelor's, or maybe you haven't even started uni and you're just doing a 3-month summer internship. You are to be curious and you're actually expected to ask questions. Try to figure out the answer yourself first, but if you struggle to do that, believe me, it's better to ask a question, be embarrassed for a couple of minutes. And I know sometimes it feels awkward to interrupt someone, especially if you're working in the open space. I remember that I felt a little bit embarrassed to ask questions just because I felt like everyone was so focused and everyone was just working on their thing. But usually people are actually happy to answer your questions, and it shows that you are really want to know what is happening and you want to get to know a little bit more about the subject that you're working on. Don't be afraid to ask questions. And I know sometimes it's very uncomfortable and you feel like you look stupid. Don't be afraid to ask questions here, all right? Then we have a coffee chat, and coffee chats, it's something that is a good way to network with people, to get to know your team members, people from different teams that are working on different business lines or different departments. Of course, always be polite while asking a person for coffee, but I would prefer to for the first time to send an email to a person. Of course, it depends on the level of seniority. For the first email, I would stick to a more polite tone as you don't know the person, and I would suggest you to avoid just sending a message like, hey, would you like to grab a coffee, to a person that you haven't met before. And also, if there is someone who suggested you to meet someone or who mentioned the word for you that you need to meet this person, always mention this person in the message so that the person knows from whom you are coming, or at least this is something that I was doing, and I think this is polite to mention from whom you got this reference. But I find that in a general, it's also a good way to know what are the opportunities that are in the company or in the different teams, or maybe there are some projects that are open and they're looking for new people. Here, remember always to check with your manager whether or not you can take on more projects. Just don't decide that you can do it all yourself. But I think in general, it will help you to create a better understanding of the company, and then after that create your proper judgments whether or not you'd like to stay in this company, because it's also up to you to decide to get this feel, whether or not you get a good feel and you see yourself working here, or maybe that's not the case and you don't feel like working. So your task here is to get to know as much as possible possible, both about colleagues and about people that are working. And it's also a great way for you to build your network. Now let's talk a little bit more about working hours. I remember first couple of days I would come to the office every day at 9 and I'd be the one who lived before 6. And I remind you that the working week in Switzerland is 40 hours. It's 8 hours per day. One day I remember I stayed up until 6:15, 6:20, and I would see that everyone around me was still working. There was no one who was leaving. I felt a little bit awkward. I didn't know whether or not I'm allowed to leave. Should I stay? Should I keep working? But mind you, this is my second day. I really didn't know what was the right time to leave. And I remember asking my colleague that was sitting next to me, hey, where are we supposed to leave? She smiled and she was like, whenever you want. You are free to leave whenever you want. Then I just packed my things and I left. Then I remember my aunt told me once, she really drew my attention to my working time. She was like, why are you leaving so late? You're the first one to leave. If I was your manager, I would think that this person is not serious. Only after a couple of months, I started to understand the words of my aunt. If you are a young person and you just started to work, this is your first job ever. Let's say this is your first job. I don't know what's this noise. Let's say this is your first job ever and every day you're coming to work at 9 and you are the first one to leave. And as a manager, I would naturally start thinking that you're not serious, that you're not taking seriously your position, you're not taking seriously your work because you're expected to work. And it doesn't matter if you work for 8 hours and if you're still working your 8 hours, it's just the human nature to think that someone is working less, I think. So here I would suggest you don't be the one who comes the last and leaves the first. You will sometimes see people who come at 9 and then at 6 o'clock or even before 6 they're already leaving. Let's say they take 2 hours lunch break. Don't be that person. Try to aim for coming to work around 8:30, 8:15, 8:30. You are free to go around 5:30, 5:45 before 6 o'clock. This is my personal experience, and I find after I shifted my working hours from coming a little bit early, I think my manager started to regard me a little bit differently. This is at least the impression that I've got. Also here I'd like to talk about lunch breaks. Imagine there is Mark that is sitting next to you and he's been working there for 10 years. Every day at lunch he's busy. It's either he's playing tennis, badminton, he goes to the swimming pool, he goes to the city to have lunch with his friends, and he takes every day for 2 hours. I'm exaggerating here, but you got the idea that you are not yet there. You as an intern, I would not suggest you to take 2 hours of lunch break unless this is a lunch with your team and you are eating all together. But as an intern, as a person who just started to work, I would suggest you to avoid having a long breaks unless you really have to have let's say doctor's appointment or like apartment viewings. To have this kind of excuses, that's still fine. Of course, always inform your manager, but just in general, try not to take 2 hours of a lunch break as an intern. And I don't know if you can relate to me, but I'll be curious to hear if you agree with me or not. I would like to hear your opinion if you think the same or not. I'd like to talk about this thing over here, and this is our phones. Our phones are both our blessings and the curse, just because we are using them all the time. We are all the time on our phones. You can do an internship at any age, but let's assume you are a young person in your 20s. We are using our phones a lot, and I would suggest you try not to be seen on your phone all the time. Also, what not to do is don't take pictures at your desk, don't film TikToks, don't make BeReals, don't send snaps to your friends while you're working, don't post stories of you working, don't be seen scrolling on Instagram or on Snapchat or TikTok. Everyone uses phones these days. It's normal, but just work, it's not the place where you can, and especially as a young adult who's just started to work, it just ruins your image, and you want to be perceived as a responsible young adult who wants to gain an experience, to have very fruitful and successful internship. Just try to use your phone as less as possible. Unless you have to make a call, just excuse yourself or just leave the open space unless you're working in the open space with some other colleagues. Just try not to disturb other people that are working with you. And remember, don't use it a lot. There is some construction that is happening. I really hope that you cannot hear it. I would like to touch upon the earplugs and the earphones. This is how you call them. You would see sometimes people, especially especially in an open space, to wear their earphones. I know that you might feel like you are distracted and you cannot concentrate, but you should bear with that. And it's better you listen to what people are talking around you, so you will get to know what usually your colleagues discuss or what is happening in the team, what is the team dynamic. This is beneficial for you. This is not a distraction. This is good for you. I would not recommend you to use your earphones while you're working. I'm sorry to tell you that, but you might not be perceived as responsible and a serious young adult, and this is something that you don't want. That's it for today. I really hope that those tips were useful for you and they will help to navigate your internship, that will make your internship successful. Let me know in the comments if you find those tips useful. If you like this kind of content, please like this video and follow my channel. Also, if you don't agree with me on something, I'll be happy to hear that. Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you in some other videos. Bye bye.